Welcome to the Mizell Show.
An inspiration for a new generation.
Hi, I'm Alana Mizell, a loving mother of two, a devoted wife to Stephen, and an entrepreneur helping women realize their dreams and potential.
And I'm Stephen Mizell, caring father of two, a devoted husband to Alana, and a driving force to help young men prepare for life after college football.
And if that wasn't enough, we're a biracial couple.
She was raised in the North, but I was raised in the South.
The only thing normal about our lives, who am I kidding? It's never normal around here. Join us for the Mizell Show.
Right now. So long since we've seen your face. How have you been?
It has been a really long time. I've been good. I transitioning to this new lifestyle of not working at a university anymore. That's been quite interesting. But traveling a little bit here and there, some for work, some for just personal vacations, and so that's been good. Trying to maintain that balance, keep me sane.
Yeah,
Definitely have to do that.
So
sure.
Let's start by, if you'll just give everybody kind of like a little overview of who you are, your background a little bit.
So Kyle Nixon, I have worked in higher education in some capacity for the last decade or so, a little bit longer, across the Southeast, mostly working in college access, so college recruitment, admissions, as well as student success, so student retention and transition programs, so new student orientation, things like that. I spent the last 7.5 years at the University of Memphis, most recently as the Director of Recruitment and Orientation, overseeing those operations in the undergraduate admissions office. Around January of this year, I transitioned off campus and started working for NASPA, which is the National Student Affairs Association. And about 6 years ago, NASPA, with the great benefactors, the Suter Foundation, established the Center for First Generation Student Success. And so in some ways, my worlds collided a little bit, and my role is Director of Network Expansion and Operations. And essentially what I do is work to recruit institutions from all around the country to partner with us to essentially help them scale first-generation student success efforts and make their campus environments better for first-gen students.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. And of course,
You're just so cool, Kyle.
You're holding it down,
know
Kyle.
about that.
I'm very, very proud of you. Of course, we crossed paths, working at the University of Memphis, from me to Alana. So this
Were you at the U of M when I was an orientation guide, or was that after?
I was
after.
not.
He was not
Okay.
there.
I was not.
Okay.
Yeah, it was after.
It was after.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
But education is something that's higher education is something that's, it's important to me and Alana and you. And we've also spent a large part of our career in higher education. But with school starting back and the recruitment process starting very soon, we thought it was very important to just hop on a call with I'm not going to call you an industry expert because I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but like...
Yeah, but he is.
Expert?
No. No.
But someone that lives this and knows it and really
Yes.
understands it. So I guess my first reaction to a couple months ago when they made a very huge change to the college admissions access, can you explain that to our audience, what happened?
Wait. Let's back up just a hot second. So we have a number of listeners that are either have a high school age student or are about to have like a junior in senior.
Sure.
So maybe let's lay the framework of like, why is the college admissions process, like why does it start as early as, sophomore year?
No, it starts in 8th grade. I always tell people 8th grade of middle school.
So why? Why is that age important?
So I'll give my 2 cents and I'll let Kyle chime in.
You'll let the industry expert talk.
No, we as an office, because I feel like one thing that Kyle, because I actually worked for Kyle, one thing that we really honed in was we were really focusing on college access, and we wanted people to go to the University of Memphis, and a lot of times they did. But the key with the university like Memphis is about educating the population. So pinpointing and talking to eighth graders, you are now helping them see that ninth grade year is the first year it counts. And so as an eighth grader, you have to be setting the tone with different things and characteristics you can bring into that freshman year, because a lot of people don't realize that your colleges really look at your freshman, sophomore, and junior year. The senior year is very important, but the magnitude of the college admissions process, they can't wait until you finish that senior year. And so a lot of times freshmen come in and think, oh, I'm a freshman, I have plenty of time to adjust. And then they're almost through their freshman year, like, man, it hit me hard. That GPA or that whatever has really already kind of set them back. That's how I kind of see it.
So, Kyle, with that being said, what are some of the things that obviously we're not going to be telling an eighth grader? I don't know what I want to do with my whole life, and there's no way you're going to know it in eighth grade. So, what are some of the things an eighth grader or the parents of eighth graders can start to be thinking about to prepare their student?
Sure. So I would agree with what Stephen said as it relates to the in the classroom experience. That ninth grade, that first semester really charts the course of what your GPA will be in high school. People talk about how it's so much easier to mess up a GPA than it is to fix it. And so it's important for students to think about that starting in ninth grade, because that goes with them all throughout their high school experience. But then as they're applying to colleges, when they apply, it's usually the fall semester of their senior year, and they don't have any grades for their senior year. So that's a piece of it. I think the other side to that is what they're doing outside of the classroom. And so what colleges and universities pay attention to whether or not a student, was involved in a club or organization. They pay attention to whether or not a student is involved in their community through community service. And it's not, just because they want students to have a resume. It's because they want students to enter their spaces with the necessary skills to be successful. Skills like communication, teamwork, things like that, that you can't always get in the classroom. And so I would say that those two areas are probably the most important foundationally. But then, of course, as you move along in that process, it's so important for students and families to start understanding, the importance of financial aid and what that process looks like. The FAFSA application, even though they can't really do it or submit it until their senior year, it's important for them to know how to do it and what that looks like, the information that they'll need, how to avoid student loans that they don't necessarily need. All of those things are things that can build upon their success when they go off to college, that a lot of people, unfortunately, don't start until their senior year or the second semester of their senior year, when it's too late.
And I think that's so important, Kyle, because especially with the large population that you work with first generation, but even some non-first generation, just looking at a FAFSA beforehand. Yep. And a FAFSA is a free application for student aid, and it's something that the government uses to sometimes look at loans, but also other potential scholarship opportunities actually go through the FAFSA. But I do feel having people actually look at it beforehand, because a lot of roadblocks you feel, or you probably see, is that people don't want to share their information. They don't want the government to know what's going on. But if you start that conversation as a freshman, maybe by senior year, the parents are a little bit more warmed up to it, because a lot of times sometimes these parents are getting it for the first time their senior year, and they are just like, they're just astonished about all the information they need. I don't have this. Who needs that? I don't give anybody my social. And you're just like, well, you got to kind of tee it up for them.
So does everybody have to complete a FAFSA, no matter what?
Everyone who wants to be considered for federal student aid has to complete a FAFSA. There are students out there whose families may, pay for their entire, college tuition, or they may have scholarships that are outside of the federal system or some of the state systems, where they don't have to complete the FAFSA. And then within some states, so for example, students within the state of Tennessee, in order to qualify for the Hope Scholarship, which is
Mm-hmm.
a scholarship for all Tennessee residents, they have to complete the FAFSA in order to do that. And so
Okay.
there are some parameters that are state based, but all students don't have to.
Okay.
And then, like
Fascinating.
Kyle said, a lot of colleges across the country are also using the FAFSA as a trigger point for some of their foundation or scholarships. They say, hey, if you don't do this fast, but I don't know the ramifications hypothetically of this scholarship and how much we can award you. So sometimes, even though you might not think you need it, but if you want some scholarships at certain schools, the FAFSA is required.
Yep.
So we've now kind of laid the groundwork of we've got eighth graders. We kind of know we've got to start building up their communication skills. Maybe those are things outside of the classroom. We've now kind of gone through all of high school. I've seen a FAFSA. I know what's coming. It's my senior year. I've applied. Now I'm waiting on my acceptances. What has been, previous to the recent changes, has been, when you're looking at institutions across the United States, has kind of been the deciding factors, maybe in some of the more prestigious institutions, as far as students getting accepted?
Ooh, so in terms of prestigious institutions, I would define that as Ivy League institutions, as well as state flagship institutions.
Yes, state flagship, yeah.
And so,
And what's a state flagship
So a
institution?
state flagship institution is in every state, just being honest, and Kyle can say this too, a lot of the educational funds go to that one school that you want to kind of like put on your pedestal as your go-to school.
So in Tennessee, it's the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, University of Tennessee is definitely in
And
Tennessee.
in Mississippi, which one is it?
It depends on who you
it's
talk
Ole
to.
Miss.
It's Ole Miss. If it's Ole Miss, though.
It's Ole Miss
Let's
and
just go ahead and start the
and,
fighting
and
words.
then Arkansas is the University of Arkansas. So
Not Arkansas
That's
State.
No, not Arkansas State. They don't get any love.
Wait, I don't know. Okay.
And typically those institutions are the ones that receive the most state funding. They probably have the most research dollars for their faculty. They're likely producing the higher retention and graduation rates, and probably have the most going for themselves. I hate to say it like that because it sort
Yeah.
of puts them in a box and puts others in a box, but to simplify
But
it,
it goes beyond just the athletic program. So we happen to
Yes.
mention schools that have pretty, beefy athletic programs, but you're also talking about some of the other side, like the actual education
Right.
portion does play a role.
Yes.
right.
And
Well, and the athletic programs are great because of that, because they're
Okay.
getting those funds. They're able to recruit those students and have the scholarships available.
Okay.
Whereas other institutions, regionally based, aren't necessarily equipped that way.
Okay.
But to answer your question, I think
Yes.
when
Sorry, I
thinking about
derailed us.
those institutions, I would probably say the academics for sure. So students with a certain grade point average obviously has a higher leg up on what that looks like. Standardized test scores. It's interesting because during the pandemic, a lot of institutions adopted this sort of test optional or test blind mindset where they were admitting students without standardized test scores. But a lot of institutions are going back to using those.
Interesting.
So those two things I think are important. And the unfortunate thing is also who you know. If you know someone at those institutions or have a way in, that impacts whether or not you will be admitted to that specific institution.
And that goes beyond a legacy.
Yes, that goes
Yes.
beyond legacy. So
Like the legacy, yeah.
legacy is certainly covered in that, where Jane Doe's parents went to Harvard, and now she's sort of a shoe-in admit at Harvard. But there's also Jane Doe's great grandfather's business partner in law went there, and he knows the dean, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden Jane Doe is admitted there.
So, thinking about that and these, prestigious institutions, the flagships, the Ivy Leagues, what percentage of the admitted students do you think makes up the legacy and the more I know somebody?
So I can actually chime in. I saw an article, Kyle, and you might can chime in more. Of the Ivy Leagues, 36% of their admissions class was connected through something, through an alumni, through a parent, through a connection, through something.
So you're telling me I've got about a 60% chance,
give or take.
I mean, we just off the bat,
Yeah.
we haven't started to filter down of like my race, where my location is, any of what my accolades are, any of that.
Yeah.
Right off the bat,
Well,
we've got 60%.
I think the best way to sort of think about it is sort of the haves and the have-nots. And so those who have entered into this space in some capacity, they're a small select of the population. Those who have no frame of reference, who know no one, and have to do it on their own accord through their own hard work, it's going to be a bigger challenge for them to enter that space.
Okay, so now, what was it, about a month ago?
About a month ago, yeah.
There was a big change in our federal government changed it, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of walk us through that, Kyle.
Sure. So affirmative action, which is was a law that I think was established during either the Kennedy or the Johnson administrations back in the 60s, essentially provided an opportunity for students who were usually disadvantaged, students who were not necessarily represented in certain areas, the fair chance to be considered for admission to certain or to all institutions. And essentially someone challenged that law, and their challenge was upheld in the Supreme Court. So essentially what the Supreme Court said was it's unconstitutional for the government to say an institution must consider race when admitting students to colleges and universities.
Race and disability?
I'm not sure if disability is covered or not.
Okay.
I know it's race for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, they struck down the law, and so what that means is that when college and university administrators are looking at building their incoming classes, and they had previously took race into consideration, they don't have to do that by law anymore. And so let's say, the University of Tennessee, for example, their Black student population is just, a small percentage of their entire student population. And so what they were doing was, working to recruit students of color, namely Black students. Well, I don't know if they were doing that because they wanted to genuinely increase their diversity, or it was a way to, be in line with affirmative action. But by law, they don't necessarily have to do that anymore.
And then also with that, those fundings from those programs were able to be federal funds because of affirmative action.
So for affirmative action in relation to, you're talking about like diversity on an campus?
Yes. So for instance, a University of Tennessee or UNC Chapel Hill, if they were looking to do programs to increase their minority base, they could apply for federal grants to fund those programs, to say, hey, we're going to do a weekend trip for minority or first generation students, because this is going to give our campus population more diversity.
Because essentially your affirmative action is cute, but once they get here, we've got to support them.
Yeah,
that's right.
Kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so now those grants are not there?
Those grants are not there because you don't have a law that's forcing people to look into it.
And saying, well, now we need this bucket of money to take care of these people.
And now that bucket of, exactly.
Which, that bucket of candidates, the large majority are Black.
First generation.
Probably mixed race. Or ultimately we're talking about minorities when you're talking about the application portal.
Basically anyone who is non-white.
So everybody except me. So I would get it.
You would get it.
Because I'm super smart. No. My ACT was so bad. Anybody, you can do it. We'll figure it out for you. No. Okay, so that's just I just of course had to make a little bit of a joke in a pretty intense situation.
And so now that you mentioned this earlier, Kyle, in the last 2 to 3 years since the pandemic, you had a kind of a pendulum swinging maybe in a different way with them waiving test scores. Like, all right, you know what? Let's do more in terms of let's look at your race, let's look at your involvement, look at your GPA. So
you mean let's look at the person and not a test?
Exactly.
I'm
so you're looking at, okay, so this minority student has a chance. Now they're swinging back to like, you know what? Let's go back to the testing. We need that. And now you swing even more, whichever way you want to call it, with pulling an affirmative action. So in the last 2 years, you would have a minority student feeling very hopeful, like, okay, you know, my test score is not good. They're looking at other things that are waiving the test score. Oh, affirmative action was still in place, but now no affirmative action. Yep. They're bringing the test scores back, and now all of a sudden that person is like, not going to say hopeless, but they are really like, man, I had something going, it's now been pulled from me.
Okay.
Yep. So I think to respond to that, you will definitely see a change in the enrollment makeup, probably at some of those institutions we talked about earlier. So the Ivy Leagues, some of the flagships, because they don't have to do that. In some ways, and I don't mean it in this way, but in some ways, this is sort of a win for those regional institutions, institutions where they need the numbers, you know, just to keep their doors open. You think about HBCUs, you know, a lot of students may start considering those as options, just because, you know, they're on the up and up, you know, thanks to the Biden administration and what they've invested in HBCUs. But two, I think that the way in which they're marketing and selling that experience is one that you can't really get at a Yale or Brown or Harvard. And so those types of institutions will probably see an upswing in their enrollment. Nothing drastic. And I say that because one, Black students, brown students who are attending Harvard and Yale and, you know, Princeton, they deserve to be there, and they are going to continue to do what it takes to be there and be on those campuses. You know, the playing field is far from leveled, but I think students today have access to more resources to prepare them to be successful on those campuses and to get to those campuses. And so, you know, we're still going to see Black and brown students on those campuses.
And I also feel like yourself and your organizations, you're going to find more, in theory, hopefully, more college access counselors, programs fighting even harder to make sure those students who deserve to be there get that voice. And so using those connections, using those trips, using those resources to push even harder, because, you know, you have a very strong student that, let's say, may or may not get that attention, but now you're like, okay, I need to fight a little bit harder for them to get on that radar, because, you know, that affirmative action piece has been removed.
Okay, so I want to go back. I think that we'll have some people that just don't know some of the things that you guys talked about. So when you say HBCUs, yes, I hope that everybody has learned what this means, but just in case, what do you mean by an HBCU? Like, what defines an HBCU? Healing and wellness and motivation is huge for the Mizell Show. And recently we had New Day Healing and Wellness on the podcast. We are super, super excited to be able to offer you guys a discount code under the name Mizell. If you hop into New Day Healing and Wellness, you can go to Red Light, you can go to the sauna, you can do the salt booth. They have so many different things to offer, and we're just so excited for you guys to be able to experience some wellness of your own.
Sure. So HBCU is a historically Black college or university. Institutions that were established, you know, in the last two or so centuries for students who were Black because they weren't, you know, admissible to white institutions, and so or predominantly white institutions. And so these are institutions, you know, that are state institutions, some that are private, but many that are state, that exist to educate or were designed to educate the Black population. Most of those you will see in the South, primarily the Southeast, but they are they still exist.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other one that you kind of mentioned how there'll be access programs. What do you mean by access programs?
So when you look at it from a standpoint, you have different levels of ways to get into college, and you have a high school senior that goes to a high school. Usually, I'm gonna say usually, they have a high school counselor that is there to support them through that journey, where they go to a trade school, to go to a 2-year college, to go to a 4-year college. But some places, and I'll let Kyle speak to this, there are programs outside of the high school to help assist those students. Correct, Kyle?
Yeah, that's correct. So
Okay.
you think about like the Upward Bound program. You think
Okay.
about, I was actually on a call just last week or 2 weeks ago with a program based out of New York called Let's Get Ready. There's one in LA. I think it's called the Black Student Success something. So these are programs that are either nonprofit or privately funded to provide students with resources, either in college counselor, financial aid nights, things like that, that are outside of their school and school district to provide access.
Okay. So we're just going to play a game. Now it's 2023. I have a current, like, we just finished 8th grade year. We did all the things. We got a Boy Scout, whatever. Like, they're doing the extracurriculars. Now that I know that the pendulum has swung so far one way or the other, we're going to say that we've got a minority student. What do I help them focus on to prepare now that kind of the tides are changing?
So one thing that I like to tell students, and I think this is the case for when choosing a college, but then also things that help them to be successful in college. There are 5 pieces to that. The first one is affordability. So start thinking about whether or not you can afford a certain institution that you are interested in. The next one is academics. Like, does this college have my major that I want to do? Like, I want to be, an oceanographic engineer or something like that. Well, I'm probably not going to go to Iowa or Minnesota to a landlocked state in order to get this degree. Like, there are no
Yeah.
oceans nearby. The other piece is fit. So do I fit in at this institution? Is this somewhere that I can see myself thriving? The what I said, affordability, fit, academics, location. So where is it located? Where is it in proximity to home? Do you need to be close to family? Are you okay with going far? Things like that. And then the fifth one just escaped me. I will think of it and let you all know. But those are all 5 things that
Yeah.
I can think of, or 4 in this case, where these are the things that you need to be thinking about, even
Yeah.
as early as 9th grade. Because truly, like, if you want to be an engineer, then you're probably going to need to go to a college or university with a good engineering program. And so, as you're thinking about these things, it's going to impact where you're scheduling your tours, what you're doing in your summers. Like, do you spend summer camp at an engineering summer camp? How you're preparing financially. If your family has, the finances to pay for it, good. If they don't, think about what that looks like and how you can start preparing what that looks like. I have a nephew who's starting his senior year in just a few days, and he's a first generation college student, and I have been on him for the last 2 years. I'm sure he's sick of me. But these are things that it's important to start thinking about them early. He's fortunate to have me as his uncle who's, spent his career doing this, but
Yeah.
all students don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
And so as they, start thinking about what's next after college, they should do it earlier rather than later.
And I think one thing that's also vital that Kyle mentioned in the academics piece, yes, make sure they have that major that you want to do, nursing or engineering. But one thing that Kyle pushed us to also have them do, look at that school's academic advising, look at that school's career center, look at that school's student support, because if you, chances are, change your major, what kind of support will
Who
you
changes
have?
their major?
Well, I'm just saying, what kind of support will you have to help you figure
Yeah.
out your other options or other ideas? Because so many times students will change that major, they end up transferring a school or getting lost because they didn't know the other resources that are there to help them, and they change their mind.
So I have just I guess it's kind of on the other side of that. So we've now got affirmative action is gone. We just have to be honest. There are some institutions that will no longer pay attention to how many brown students are on their campus.
Yeah, valid.
More than likely, I foresee it creating a divide between our education systems. How, and this, I want you guys to individually answer this. I almost wish I could have you plug your ears.
Oh.
How do you think this removing affirmative action will change the workplace later on?
Ooh.
Because ultimately, these students are going to college to get degrees. And if some of these flagship institutions are no longer paying attention to the diversity numbers, then my gut is telling me it may fluctuate. I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think about that.
I think my thing as a communicator and a people person, it's going to keep people in their comfort zones and their boxes. And so when they get to the workplace, they will experience things that they have never seen in sometimes 8 to 12 years. Could you think about some of these students, let's say, that are admitted to these schools, they have gone to the certain high school, gone to a certain middle school, now they're going to a college where everybody looks like them and talks like them, but then they go to this job in New York City or someplace where there's like this bustling potential diversity, and they are not taught the people skills to be able to communicate or have compassion because they've never had it.
On both sides of the color spectrum.
Both sides of the color spectrum, both sides.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say, being in this world that we live in now in corporate America, I fear for some people.
Where corporate America is pushing diversity.
Yes.
Okay. Kyle,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I think I'll add to that the cultural competencies that you may get, at a diverse institution, you won't get. So I think of University of Memphis, for example. There are so many different ways in which the university ensured that we knew how to interact with other people who were different than us. And this isn't, something to say that University of Memphis pushed diversity and pushed these things. This is just a fact that, like, if you showed up on a campus with, in your residence hall suite, and you had a black student, a Latinx student, a white student, an Asian student, a biracial student, all in one suite, then you are getting so many things from those experiences that you're not going to get from institutions where that diversity is lacking. And so some of those cultural competencies aren't going to be there. And so when they step foot, in a workplace setting, let's say healthcare, for example, you went to this institution, you got, your nursing degree, but like at no point did you ever come into contact with a Latina student, or a Latina patient. When you get to a hospital in an inner city, you may not know or understand some of the medical situations that they deal with, and so those competencies won't really be there. The other piece that I think will happen is that some workplaces will remain stagnant because they don't have that diversity of thought, and you'll see a decline or somewhat of a breakdown in what that looks like. Now, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but I'm going to say it now anyway. I am truly hopeful, and politically, I think that we will, within the next decade or so, reverse this and bring back this law and other laws that really support diversity. So I don't think that the workplace will be impacted long term because of this this sole singular decision, because I think we will get it right within the next decade or so.
And I
A
think
decade
also
feels very long to me.
it does feel long, but
Like
It's long,
Adele will
but
be going to college by then.
they'll be going to college then.
yeah,
But I do feel you also made a good point that a lot of universities, like we joke about, the Arkansas States, the University of Memphis, the Western Kentucky, these regionally based universities that never really they have affirmative action, but they never had to really work on it because of their
right.
population that came. And with the current cost of inflation and everything else, I think those schools will see maybe an uptick and people will invest more in their regionally based universities
Yep.
because they're able to have access to it. And like we always say, when you put forth that effort and you get that college degree, you're giving yourself access to a lot more things. And so I do think that's a great point, Kyle. The regionally based universities that never really worked with that will see an influx of some of their enrollment.
Yeah. I mean, I think about some of our former colleagues at the University of Memphis. Like they are positioned well to, not see any negative impact because of this.
Yeah,
If anything, they're going to see more institution or more students entering their
Yeah.
institution, which is good for them.
yeah.
I'm so glad I got out when I did, but I
Same.
think it's good for them.
Yeah. Um, I wonder, and this is just a random thought, if it will drive up more trade options. Like people realizing they may not be able to get into their institution that they want and then choosing to go a trade route versus an institution
I think it's going to spark more conversation for that because the company we work for now, Cal, it's a global company, and we look at other countries in which they
route.
push trade. They recognize it, and I think that's something that with this affirmative action change, it might do that. So I guess a good question to ask you when you're working with those first generation students, do you guys recognize the aptitude sometimes that hey, this student really needs to go be an airplane mechanic, or this person really should just go
Or
towards
welder,
that, or welder.
because we need
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, so I would say that there are probably some other factors that will impact whether or not students go the trade route. The first of them being the affordability of college.
Yeah.
The cost of college is outpacing
That's
just
insane.
about in any other post secondary option for students, and so um, it will be a smart decision financially for many people to take up the trading route. Sometimes I wish that I had had done that in some
Same.
ways because
Yeah.
I mean you would financially you would be better off depending on what your major, what your degree was in. So I think that there are other factors. I do, however, believe that this will impact trade as well because you think about like the students who were mediocre to good that went to a flagship may now come to the regionally based institution. And the regionally based institution, although they may want those numbers, they don't have the infrastructure to
Yeah.
explode their enrollment. They don't have the professors to teach. They don't have the residence halls. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have the space to accommodate those students. And so what you're probably going to see is students who were probably at risk or lower performing that were traditionally admitted to regionally based institutions, they may be denied or encouraged to go to a community college and then come back because there's simply not the space. Which is it's not necessarily fair to those students because they should have the option of going to their institution that they're paying taxes for. But from a business model, I think that you'll see a change there.
It sounds a lot to me like the division between the lower class and the upper class is going to get more significant, and
Yeah.
then the middle class is going to continue to get lost.
Yeah,
Yes, which is really
But
all
yes.
it's all in the plan. I mean, you think about, like, and I don't want to get too political. That's
Right,
probably
right.
another podcast, but you think about the political ideology of conservatives or of Republicans, especially far right Republicans. They are fine with that division and
Right.
fine with um, you know you know we brought ourselves up by our bootstraps. We built our homes. We did all of this. Whereas on the other side, liberals and more progressives are more interested in providing an opportunity for as many people as possible, to give them an even playing field. And so, this is all by design. I mean, we have one of the most conservative Supreme Courts in the history of our country, and
Yep.
this is what we expect them to do.
Right.
We just gotta
Right.
figure
Hang
out how
on.
to.
We're just gonna hang
you
on.
gotta hang on, and you gotta continue to adapt. But yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
is a changing tides.
So to kind of close us out,
Sure.
what would be your one piece of advice to parents as they kind of navigate this journey?
Sure. I think the most important piece of advice is to ask for help. Ask for help from the high school counselor. Ask for help from the college admissions counselors. Ask for help from community organizations. There are people out there that are getting paid to answer your questions. And so, the best thing to do is ask for help and ask them how to navigate these complex processes. Because if you don't ask for help, you'll likely, be wandering around blindly trying to figure out what to do when there are people in place to be able to assist. And so if you don't know how to ask for help, find somebody and have them to ask for you. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
there
I love
are
that.
certainly people out there.
Stephen,
I
what
love
do you
that.
think? What's your one piece of advice?
I think my one piece of advice would be, I think that's what Kyle said. Asking for help is some of the biggest problems that people have, because there's so much knowledge around you. You have so much access to knowledge to just you got to ask for help, because it is something that is very hard to navigate.
Yeah.
It is something that is ever changing, as we saw these last few months. So I think I would agree with him. Asking for help and really, I guess the only other side of it would be, keep asking for help, and until you get the answer for yourself. Because sometimes people will ask for help and not take that next step to say, but what about this? Or is there another way to do this? And so to kind of almost be demanding politely in your asking for help, because sometimes people, they will get an answer just like, well, oh, so-and-so said this. Well, did you ask why? Did you ask, is there another way?
Kind of that next question.
The next question, exactly.
I mean, you mentioned something and kind of goes with the asking for help. College is you only do it so many times.
Yeah.
And so you only buy a house so many times, and you're not going to go buy a house most of the time without a realtor and a title attorney.
Yeah.
But we expect to be able to go to college and figure it out all by ourselves.
Yeah.
And some houses cost less than the college degree.
Facts.
So why are we not thinking about college in terms of that significant investment?
Yeah.
I wish we had in my house. We didn't ask enough about the loan process, didn't ask enough about, what are the benefits that I could have gotten as a dyslexic student. None of that. But, now hopefully people listening to the podcast and kind of with different avenues, and because of social media and things like that, they know that these jobs do exist and to ask those questions.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Absolutely.
So if you guys are enjoying this, definitely leave us a review. Give us the feedback. If there's something you guys want us to talk about, reach out to us on our website at themizellshow.com. There is a contact section. You can put it in there. We would love to hear about it. Or you can always go over to Instagram at The Mizell Show. Also, as always, don't forget to screenshot this episode and just add it to your stories and tag us on Instagram, on Facebook at The Mizell Show. Thanks, guys. Are you loving The Mizell Show? Well, we love you all. And did you know that you can have me and Steven talk to your team or a group of 25 of your friends? All it takes is 25 people showing up on either a Zoom call, a Facebook Live, or really anywhere. Hopefully in person sooner rather than later. But how do you get us? So all you have to do is email themizellshow@gmail.com, or you can direct message us on Instagram at The Mizell Show.